Thanks again, everyone, for taking some time to join us today. It looks like we have a really good group here for this joint webinar between Strategic Information Group and Prophix for QAD clients. We'll be focusing on corporate performance management, or the acronym CPM that you might hear us say a few times here, and what a solution like ours can accomplish in tandem with a really powerful system like QAD. I know we all wish we were doing this at Explore in Vegas or one of the QAD user groups, but not being able to be in person, at least for the next little bit, this kind of introduction and this kind of slide we'll have to do. So again, my name's Scott Culotta. I'm from Prophix. We've got Suzy Reno on the line, Senior Vice President of Solutions Architecture from Strategic Information Group. We have Jamie Leveridge as well, who we'll be hearing from a little bit later on, and he'll help kind of take us through the software.
Good afternoon, everybody, and good morning still to our friends on the West Coast. Just a little bit about Strategic for those of you who might not have met with us recently, gotten an update on Strategic. We've been around quite a long time, since the early 90s, since 92. We're actually above 115 employees at this point, so this slide is those numbers are a little old. 5 locations around the U.S. We do cover the entire North America continent, so headquartered in the U.S., but covering the entirety of the United States plus Canada and Mexico. We've also recently, within the last year and a half, expanded across the pond to Ireland and the UK. So we're dealing with customers over there as well. Not that we haven't always dealt with global customers, but now we have actual employees on the ground in those 2 countries. Served over 1,200 companies, and that list keeps growing. Certainly a vast number of full implementations and upgrades to go along with those. Real focus in the life science industry, but mainly regulated industries. The solution that we offer to companies is to get them on a platform so that they can reach their exit strategy, whether that's to be acquired, to go public, whatever the case may be. As most of you should know, we cover everything QAD related. So it centers around the QAD Adaptive ERP platform, but then we also offer quality solutions and services, integrations, extension solutions, validation toolkit protocols, as well as implementation services to go along with that. And just to highlight our services across the bottom there, certainly the implementations and upgrades are the heart of what we do. Integration work that you might need, whether it's EDI or a web integration with a web platform of some sort, validation services, managed services for both QAD and can act as your IT department for you and monitor all those goings on with your QAD database and your EDI transmissions back and forth. We have a help serve desk, so any application or technical assistance that you might need related to your installation of QAD, we can help you with. And we also offer staff augmentation services. So a little bit about why Prophix. So my role in QAD as a VP of Solutions Architecture is to help companies find the right solutions, okay? And we are always seeking solutions to meet our customers' needs. Prophix certainly goes a long way toward that, and we have been partners with actually since before QAD and Prophix established a formal partner relationship, because we saw the need that they met and the gap that they filled in the QAD solution suite. So anyone on this call who comes from a financial background knows that the development of your financial budgets and forecasts is not a strong suit of QAD. QAD is a fantastic budget repository, but it doesn't really have good budget development tools. It also doesn't have, even in the older version of SE where I could theoretically build a budget, it was really just on prior, I didn't have the ability to put in data and variables to help drive my financial performance planning. So again, much a strong suit of Prophix. And then The second thing that we're looking for, not just to fill gaps, but to enhance native QAD capabilities. So Prophix does a great job with modeling scenarios, and especially in times like we're facing right now where, certain businesses are expanding like wild, launching brand new plants to create PPE or hand sanitizer, things like that. We've had some customers doing that. Companies are considering contractions. Maybe I need to consolidate some facilities or think about dropping a line of business that's really been hard hit by everything going on in the world. Okay, so good scenario modeling. We're also seeing in our customer base a huge amount of mergers and acquisitions, and along with that come multiple legacy systems, multiple third-party systems. Prophix does a great job of grabbing and getting and commingling data from multiple sources to give you a coherent, complete financial analysis. And finally, financial consolidations, especially if I'm dealing with those multiple systems. Consolidating in QAD obviously can be difficult. So again, just something that we see as a good tool to leverage in our customer base for you guys to get better information faster, quicker, so you can truly manage your corporate performance. Okay. Scott, I will turn it back over to you. Thanks, everybody, for attending today.
Thank you, Suzy. That was excellent. So we are going to cover a lot of those points that Suzy just went over, but I do want to make sure that I'm starting kind of at the very beginning here. So I thought going over kind of what the current challenge is right now would be valuable to spend a tiny bit of time on. And it is safe to say, that there's an extremely high level of volatility in the market right now. You have stay-at-home advisories, you've got supply chain shortages, you've got disruption upending several industries, and like Suzy said, you have some that are growing right now and adding new product lines, looking at maybe expanding as well. And this kind of level of uncertainty, it's greatly affected corporate finance departments. You have 2020 budgets and forecasts that just being recently finalized are likely no longer relevant. This is happening internally here at Prophix as well. And even in the best of times, it's difficult to accurately budget, plan, and forecast, but with everything going on right now, it's now just that much more difficult, especially when you're relying on manual Excel spreadsheets, and if you also have multiple systems across your group that are siloed off from each other. So just to set the stage here and go against that most basic level, typically to start, an organization is budgeting and forecasting and reporting in their analytics. It's done in spreadsheets. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It can be more than adequate when your organization consists of maybe just a small number of people, one entity, or a few data sources. But over time, things are going to become more and more complex. So now we're talking about multiple systems, multiple entities, maybe you're growing through acquisition. And as you add more data sources, so maybe payrolls, maybe there's now another ERP in the group, CRMs, HRIS systems, and more people as well across the organization who are going to be viewing and receiving these spreadsheets at different functional levels. When you're using such a static system, you're going to come to a point where things are going to start breaking. So the accuracy of your data, insights are going to be diminished. You're going to get these lovely, reference errors in your spreadsheets, and version control and security issues are going to start to crop up more and more frequently. But of course, with Prophix, it doesn't have to be this way. Where we fit from kind of an architecture standpoint, we sit on top of your existing QAD environment. So first and foremost, we're hooking in and connecting into your GL tables, consuming that financial data, and then providing integrated financial planning. So connecting all of those disparate data sources together, that your organization might have. And then from there, allowing you the ability to do things like what-if analysis, scenario planning, scenario modeling, like Suzy mentioned, building forecast models, doing driver-based budgets, just bringing forward all that data from multiple sources and really now starting to compare apples to apples instead of having all that information siloed off. Then with all your models built, we can output to your standard Microsoft Office tool. You can access Prophix through any modern web browser. Even sometimes we're seeing mobile or tablet devices as well. And then, of course, users have the ability, as we'll see in a little bit here, to drill back down to that transactional level of detail through Prophix. So getting into the meat of our presentation here, we're actually going to start at what a finished state with us is and looks like, and kind of work backwards from there. Elephant in the room, we know dashboards exist in QAD, and we definitely acknowledge that they can get the job done. But what you can do with a CPM solution like ours is really have the ability for multiple data sources to be pointed at our system, with then models configured on top, and dashboards used as a view into this now kind of holistic view of your organization for all your different business units. So dashboards as well at their core, they're only as good as the data that's underpinning them. So if right now you're constantly spending time with things like data validity, a CPM system like ours can also ensure that data integrity is there. And all that time that is maybe now spent on validating data can now instead be spent on kind of meaningful analysis for your business. Visual analytics, they're now linked directly to your data with that transactional level of detail underpinning it. And you don't have to input the numbers yourself. So all that kind of manual, tedious work is done for you. And another big pain point in this vein before we jump over to Jamie and actually pull up the solution is that not all financial data is easily accessible. And the solution for most, again, is manual entry, having many input templates, and that can be time-consuming and error-prone. But in Prophix, as you'll see, we can easily integrate and have the ability to pull in both structured and unstructured data. That's your operational and financial that finance and other business units so desperately need. So Jamie, that's a good point. Why don't we actually jump into Prophix and take a look at our dashboards and financial reporting?
Yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, I think you made a few really good points, Scott, and I think one of them as well that we want to focus on is that under kind of the flash of our dashboard here and our different reports we have listed out, really what Prophix is a data modeling tool. And why that is kind of important when it does come to reporting and things like that is that we're not just modeling the data that, like Scott said, we're potentially pulling from QAD, perhaps other general ledger systems, perhaps completely different systems like HRMs, CRMs, whatever else it might be. But there's a lot of data creation. And that is kind of the fundamental point that Suzy spoke to earlier, is that Prophix is also now a modeling tool that we can use to create plans and create different what-if scenarios and things like that. But the point of that now in terms of reporting and dashboarding in Prophix is that we also have access to be able to run reports in real time against not only our most recent data from QAD and all those other disparate data sources, but also against the budgets, forecasts, and what-if scenarios that we create in Prophix. So even something as simple as clicking into a dashboard there and saying, take me a level down from where I was just looking at a summary level variance chart, and show me my revenue variance now by my different sales channels. I can see where I expected to be, where I've actually gotten to, and I can apply different filters like what time I'm looking at, what time frame, different territories, and all of this is completely configured beyond what might just be in your general ledger system. And really, the most often example of that might be that you have, to Suzy's earlier point, merged or acquired several different companies that are on different systems, but you want to have a uniform or standardized reporting methodology. In this case, you're essentially able to filter between them on one unified platform, both against your budgets and forecasts with your actuals in one interface. With that said, this is kind of actually an example of a Prophix report. I kind of call this a quick analytics report, but I also wanted to give a flavor of a few more formal reports that Prophix can build. There's no canned reports out of Prophix. That's one important kind of feature to talk about. So everything really is configured to how your organization needs to best evaluate and analyze your data. But the nice thing about Prophix is, like I was saying earlier, is that you then always have access to different versions of the data. So when I create one report, I'm not creating a report that's only possible to look at from a budget perspective or from an actuals perspective, or better yet, only from one organizational perspective or one entity perspective. I always have access to filter down and see all the different filter fields in Prophix so that I can really slice and dice the data without having to go and build a new report or doing a new set of analysis. So again, really quickly here, just a quick kind of high-level overview of our health going across our balance sheet, cash flow, and income statement. I can filter quickly between my budget, 3+12 forecast, and now that we're in June, potentially a second half forecast that we're working on. And one thing that's even kind of cool you'll see here is that my balance sheet drivers, which in my actuals version are KPIs really, it's calculating my inventory turns in real time based on what I actually have in Prophix as my data points. But when I go to a forecast, these now actually become drivers which I can enter and punch in data that will change data elsewhere in Prophix. So we'll get a bit more into that later, but that's one, again, kind of fundamental piece here is that as a modeling tool, we're not just writing in data, we're actually able to write in the logic behind budget and get into the crunching of the numbers. The last thing I want to show, just from a reporting perspective, is also that we have a lot of flexibility in how we actually set up the columns and rows of a report. So even doing something like having month-to-date and year-to-date, having different versions, and as time goes on, perhaps even updating what's in here. So you can see I have my budget here for month and year-to-date in this report, but if we complete a 3+9 forecast at the end of March, or in this case, now we're coming into June, we complete a half-year forecast, we can just as easily have this report automatically pull in the most recent and fresh version of that budget or forecast that we've completed. With that, I think that's everything I wanted to cover on financial reporting and dashboarding. I know that the real meat and potatoes here is in kind of the planning and the budgeting. So with that, I'll maybe throw it back to Scott quickly.
Thanks, Jamie. And geez, it's almost like we planned it. Of course, we're going to get now to kind of the real value for many organizations, when they're looking into our solution, and that's the origination and development of plans, like your budget, like reforecast, forecasting. A lot of organizations, when they first come to us, this is one of their biggest pain points. Every new client, every transaction, every additional employee, it just adds to the amount of financial data that you have to collect and analyze and translate into business decisions. And in many cases, these tasks are distributed across your organization, and it involves, again, the sending and receiving of multiple spreadsheets. In Prophix, what we're able to do is actually use a workflow for any procedure that involves the collecting, reviewing, and approving of financial or detailed planning data. A workflow can be something as simple as distributing a monthly financial report that Jamie just showed us, or as complex as the finance department gathering the budget estimates from all the different departments or divisions for the coming year and running a submission and approval cycle until the budget is finalized. So we know that QAD can be an amazingly powerful tool for uploading a budget into. But the real crux is what we'll show here is that for the creation of a budget, you really need a solution that can foster collaboration and have purpose-built functionality for finance while also empowering non-financial users across the business as well. So we definitely want to spend some time here. And Jamie, I guess with that, I'll let us jump back into Prophix.
Perfect. So as Scott kind of alluded to, one of the major applications in Prophix that's used really for any repetitive task is our workflow engine. And fortunately for anybody who's familiar with an application called Microsoft Project, maybe not as popular as Excel or PowerPoint, I grant you, but I think a lot of people have used it. Prophix actually developed this to be very similar look and feel to Microsoft Project. And the kind of major differentiator within that, though, is that this is fully integrated to the data modeling tool that is contained within Prophix. And so what that means is that when I assign tasks and activities and create things here in Prophix, they're not just kind of a surface level or an organizational tool for me. They're actually action-oriented. So I can decide whether this is a data entry task, whether this is an approval task, a detailed planning task for more operational metrics, or even something like running a process to run allocations, a what-if scenario, or intercompany eliminations or other consolidation processes. So this is a really, really powerful tool because beyond that as well, we can assign owners, approvers, the different users in the system, give them due dates, essentially make this take away a lot of the admin aspects of budgeting, of forecasting, of report distribution, and really have them in an automated fashion. One thing I'll kind of step away maybe just from the software side of things for a split second. I would encourage everyone to really take a step back because this is one of the first things we do with new clients, or oftentimes we can do with clients, is we say, walk us through what goes on in your annual budget or in the quarterly forecast you want to start doing. And tell us what the steps are. Who are the players? What data do they need? And what data do we need from them? And what's the end goal of it? And if we can get things into a formulated pattern here of the data we need to distribute to them, collect from them, who needs to approve, and what the end result is, this is where we can get some of the biggest time gains from Prophix, is really by having as much of these repetitive processes in our workflow tool as possible. Because once we have things with a set of contingencies, we can always be assured that people are going to have the data they need before they start planning or before they start making submissions to management. And the best part is once I have this annual budget filled out or my quarterly forecast or whatever it might be, all I need to do the next time I come around to my annual budget or to my quarterly forecast is roll forward my start and due dates. From there, provided I have the same users, my reports are going to update as long as I'm maintaining them properly. My users are going to have access to the same set of reports that they already had, and the system has all the contingencies and order of things broken down so that, again, that process becomes really smooth. So to take a step back holistically here for a second, this is very much the admin side of things. This is if I'm the person who's responsible for the budget or for producing a forecast, this is one of my biggest weapons in Prophix. And what we're going to show in a moment after Scott kind of pulls us into the next step in the process here is now taking the end user approach. What's the advantages now as a financial analyst or a department head or senior leadership in the team potentially when they now need to go and build out their plan in Prophix?
Thanks, Jamie. And yeah, we wanted to spend some time here because it's just so critical right now. We're finding that, again, many finance departments, including our own here at Prophix, are looking for ways to be proactive, to get in front of market volatility. And when you're faced with such a dramatic change, such as what kind of we're all facing right now, many companies, you just don't have the time and the resources to manually plan for all the different scenarios, especially if, again, you're leveraging kind of legacy tools or manual spreadsheets to that end. And what we're able to do is really empower and enable organizations to look a bit into the future. You can model kind of an endless array of possible scenarios based on things like maybe changes in cash, revenue, costs, personnel, and anything else that are drivers for your business, and mitigate risks by running what-if analysis. So being able to create a base, best, and worst-case scenarios. So I'm going to hand things back to Jamie here, and we could see how we would accomplish that in Prophix.
Yeah, perfect. So as we said, or as I said a moment ago, I'll also just kind of quickly set the stage here. What I've clicked into is kind of the end user interface now of a workflow task. So that workflow organization that I was just showing has been pushed out. I've received an email with a link. I click into it, or I go into Prophix and I click into the link on my dashboard, and I'm directly presented with, in this case, my operating expense budgeting template. The first thing I always like to do, especially when we are talking to a crowd that's been working with Excel perhaps for years and years, is to just simply click into a cell. We usually get a bit of a sigh of relief right away when we show that if you want to, you can click in cell by cell. You can work with it like it is Excel. If you highlight things, you're going to get your average, your count, your sums. If I want to make quick changes across an array, I have options to do little adjustments, copies, pastes, undos. So there is a lot of the basic functionality in here that people love about Excel. Where things kind of differentiate out a little bit is then when we go into the power that Prophix has a modeling tool. The first of which would be actually just now this idea of being able to be flexible between a bottom-up and a top-down budget. So for certain things like perhaps advertising, just throwing in $1,000 in February doesn't really make a lot of sense. I want to know what campaigns we're running, on what platforms, via what medium. And so in that case, we can require that people actually put in the line items of what we're spending $1,000 in February on. And Prophix actually won't let me write into it unless I'm providing that level of detail. So as we can see here, we can actually require this separate interface, this subledger interface, if you will, for a specific general ledger account. At the same time, other things might not need that level of detail. We might be totally comfortable saying that our web presence is going to just cost us a certain amount. Perhaps not the best example, but in that case, we might just want to run out a yearly total that we spent $34,000 from our last year's budget that we've just rolled over here. So we'll anticipate that this is going to go up to $36,000. Prophix now knows that I've written into something that is not the lowest level. And so it's going to ask me, how do I want to allocate that down to the 12 months that roll up into 2021 for my budget? And out-of-the-box functionality we have here now is the ability to say, spread it evenly, take the logic and the weighting that already exists in the data. If I want to, I can write seasonality into quarters, or I can tie this now to any other thing in Prophix. So if this account perhaps is tied to headcount, if this is tied to IT, if this is some sort of overhead that I just want to tie to some other operational metric, I can quickly do that in Prophix. In the same way, if something is highly seasonal, I can tie things to last year and simply say, this is going to follow the same spending patterns as it did in 2020 and as it did in 2019. I have that ability to really just apply that logic into Prophix really quickly, really easily, hopefully without really having to take my end users through too much of a learning curve. The third piece I'll show here is actually the concept that we talked about earlier, and I think we just kind of threw out the term integrated financial planning, which I will admit myself is extremely buzzwordy. But what it means to Prophix is that there are certain levels where we really can't be planning employee salaries for an entire department or a sub-department just by saying salaries are going to be X amount in this month. We do need a deeper level of detail, and I'm sure the way that this is being done in most organizations is that we have a dump out of our HR or our payroll system of all of our employees, their salary information, their benefits information. We're crunching those numbers, and we're rolling them up. And while that's good, well, then we have to tie that back to our OPEX template, which then we have to tie up to our consolidated budget. In Prophix, we take out the middleman there, and we really run it all integrated. And that's where we kind of come to that very buzzwordy title of integrated financial planning. So as an example here, when I click into my employee template, that again is going to filter based on what department I'm assigned to, what entity I'm assigned to, who are my employees. I can go in here, I can make changes like correcting poor Cheryl. I don't think she has a salary of $1.3 million. I think it's probably $120,000. I can make that edit, hit calculate, hit update. And now, because both of these models are within Prophix, there's no linking of templates or cell references or formulas. All I need to do is go back into my OpEx template, and that data is already flushed over. So I'll quickly highlight these cells here, and when I hit refresh here, you should see that downward movement of poor Cheryl losing about $1 million in change off of her salary this year, unfortunately. But this is really just one concept as we think about scenario planning and creating, whether it's a budget or a forecast at large, is that we have Prophix customers that are doing this by project for both revenue and costing. We have people doing this for any capital purchasing and expenditures. We even have clients doing this at a detailed level for cash management and cash flow, where they're entering in payment terms, receivable terms, the date of the invoices, the value of the invoices in what currency, and essentially doing a live cash flow within Prophix. That's really the power that we have by having many different models with perhaps operational data or perhaps very detailed data, is that we can draw that directly back across into this financial reporting model, where then once this is aggregated, this is how we're projecting out our P&L and our balance sheet in Prophix, is all through this template and through this model. I'm going to take a quick second here because I am switching topics now. What we've just gone over is how an end user comes in and can interact with Prophix to create a new scenario, whether it is the baseline budget or a renewed budget, or we're throwing out the budget as many of our clients did and creating a new base budget scenario. And now think about kind of the what-if analysis, or the really even actually that last example I said there, which is creating a brand new scenario where we don't necessarily want to overwrite our budget, but we definitely need to be working with a new data set. And so what we employ in Prophix is this concept of versioning, which is essentially just a blank layer of data that has our full chart of accounts, our full departmental structure, entity structure. Everything that we've modeled out in Prophix is replicated in each fresh version, which means that we can have our actuals version, our budget, our forecasts for rolling or on a quarterly basis, and the what-if scenarios that we're now kind of talking about, all in one model and being able to compare them apples to apples. All I need to do to not start with necessarily a blank layer of data is use a quick shortcut tool we have in Prophix that essentially is a mass copy, paster, and manipulator. So what I'll do really quickly in here is, as you saw in that last template, I had my scenario A. So I've pre-built a quick copy and paste mechanism here, where what I'm doing really quickly is I'm actually adjusting things based on our current scenarios. I'm taking all of my OpEx. I'm taking the last 2 quarters of the year. I'm working with my marketing team, and I'm working in Stark Industries as my entity. And I'm just going to say, let me take that budget that we created back in December, move it into this new scenario, and I'm chopping 10% off of everything in OpEx right off the bat. I'm going to run this, refresh my model, and now when I head back over to my OpEx template and I go into my scenario A, I can see I have a full data set now out in July through December, as well as the previous months that I had my budget built out into, and I'm essentially now able to go in and re-interact with the data. This is not going to impact anything that I've done in my previous budget, whether that is, like I just showed there, chopping off 10%, increasing, decreasing, whatever it might be there, but also things like you can see here, you've caught me in a previous presentation I did. I know about 3 months of trade shows. I think we can just go ahead and maybe say that unfortunately that might go all the way through to the end of the year. And I'm quickly able to say, I want to adjust trade shows down by 100% because we're not going to be attending any for the rest of the year. I'm able to now go and make these changes and still have that budget that I can reflect back against. Better yet, even, I can go a step further and actually see the variance so that when management is now going to reanalyze and see how much money are we chopping off of our OPEX budget, they have access to this and now being able to see where are we making cuts, how much have we cut off of our 2020 budget. I think with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Scott because I'm about to get ahead of myself and kind of go into our last topic here. But we will be coming back to kind of discuss this further and what the real power now that we have created these what-if scenarios or these really just these new scenarios, these new versions in Prophix, where we can go from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. So like Jamie mentioned, this is going to be kind of the last area that we're covering today. It's the ability to, now that you have those models built and templates created, the ability to ad hoc report and do on-the-fly analysis. It's definitely the cherry on top, but it still is a very critical component, especially for kind of the C-suite and stakeholders that need to get answers to questions fast. Maybe you're in front of the board, whatever it is. Ad hoc reporting allows you to quickly access and navigate your data. So you can easily generate meaningful custom reports, without the need to really now, again, build formal templates. With ad hoc reporting, you can conduct high-quality analysis just by moving around your data hierarchy, as we'll see with Jamie here in a few minutes. So you can drill up, you can drill down on the specific data members that you want to focus on, and even enable data entry for kind of immediate data input as well. And you can retrace your steps with kind of an intuitive navigation look and feel. And the idea here is really to bring comprehensive reporting and analytic tools that are just configurable to reflect kind of each user's unique view of the business. And since reports are self-served, you can tailor your reports and access them without having to have the dependence on IT. So I think with that, Jamie, we can hop back into it and show our final piece here.
Perfect. So like I alluded to there before I almost kind of jumped over here, now that I have these things, really what I want to be able to do is compare things apples to apples, see in real time against actuals, perhaps against the budget, the base budget that I've created, and really just be able to actually reformat this data so that it's exactly what I want to see. And this is the tool that we actually call ad hoc analysis. And this can be used anywhere in Prophix. So just as a first example, I am going to do it in this spreadsheet. All I need to do is right-click on any data point in Prophix, hit Analyze, and Prophix is going to actually launch out and take away all the formatting and everything that I've done to apply to that and just give me this interface that now gives me access to my full model in Prophix. So you can see here every field that I've built in this demo model is now available to me not only as filter fields, kind of like in the reporting that we had, but also to be able to go in and completely reformat what we're looking at. So as I drag the version there over onto the columns, you can see now I dropped it on 2021, which has now gone over as a filter field, and I'm able to see direct comparison side by side, my budget versus my scenario A here that I've just created. And I can do, as a really quick kind of verification, seeing my scenario analysis here as well. The other thing that I really have the option to do here is, like I said, expand on what I'm looking at and completely reformat this report. So as a really quick example, Once I get comfortable with navigation in Prophix, all I need to do is right-click, and I'm presented with all the different versions that I now have in Prophix that I can do a live comparison against. And unlike a lot of reporting tools where you're having to either write some sort of commands here, or you're having to learn some sort of navigation or waiting for some time for feedback, Prophix is pretty nimble because we actually host the data in Prophix's own database, or some people kind of call it a data lake. So because of that, you can see we're getting pretty quick response times as we're pulling in more data and we're changing the queries we have. And in addition to that, because we do have our own database here, if we build a connection into the transactional level of detail, I'll just try and figure out if I can find one that will have actual transactions here. But we can actually build out data tables now where we're doing a live query. Unfortunately, not in here, but here I'll show an example back on our dashboard. But if we have the transactional tables that sit underneath the data that we're looking on, even though Prophix doesn't report at the transactional level, what I can do is do a live query against a transactional database that Prophix does host. So we're pulling in transactions from QAD, any other systems that are going to have this level of detail, and we're going to normalize it out into a table that we can now, like I'm showing here, I'm actually doing a query against this table where I'm saying, I only want to see 2020 Q1. I only want to see this customer code, this product code, this territory code, and so on. And I now have a live access into this transaction level of detail that I can pull out into Excel, or I can filter here in Prophix. I think with that, that's just about everything we were going to show in the software. I know Scott's going to touch on it a bit deeper, but we didn't get through everything today. So if there were questions on things like how Prophix handles consolidation and journal entries, how we actually build models in Prophix, how we import and export data in and out of Prophix. Apologies, we didn't go into the details of that today, but definitely follow up with us afterwards. We're happy to answer questions on things like that.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for taking us through. I just have a couple points here to finish up on. Don't worry, I'm going to spare everyone. I'm not going to go point by point on this slide. I know there's a lot of content here, but it's a graphic that I really like. It really illustrates what we bring together and kind of the four key pillars of our solution. Of course, today we covered, budgeting and plan creation. We touched on our dashboarding. We just spent some time on our ad hoc reporting. We touched on our workflow and collaboration features. And we spent some time with the what-if analysis and scenario planning. So like Jamie mentioned, we may have hit on your business needs. You may see some other areas here, like maybe multi-currency, consolidation, maybe it's mapping data from multiple systems that are more pertinent to your business and current setup. Like Jamie mentioned, if there is interest in learning more, reach out to your strategic information group rep. Type a question in right now. We've got some time to address it. And I have seen a few questions come in. Some are a little bit specific, so they might be best to kind of take offline. But I have seen a few that are a little bit more general in nature that I think would be good for our team to answer right now. One of which was just a QAD version question. So, what version of QAD can Prophix work with, and are there any limitations there? And I think I can take this one. The kind of party line, we work really well with kind of your QAD 2008 and beyond, your SE and EE. But, if you happen to be running a system that is before then, definitely reach out. There are ways that we can integrate and things that we can do to make it work. We're pretty agnostic when it comes to the systems in that respect. Would you say that's fair, Jamie? Suzy?
Yep, that's very fair. Looking at the next question, which, sorry, Scott, to jump in. I don't know if... but the question was just actually around Prophix kind of integrating or importing from Excel. And so I'll field this one. Again, unfortunately, we didn't get to it today, but as a part of our process manager, not only do we import from other systems, but we can also import from any text file, CSV, or Excel spreadsheet. So the exercise, not to go too deep into detail, but is really just massaging the data into a format that can be consumed by Prophix, and then setting up a repeating schedule. So we do have clients that, for whatever reason, they're not able to perhaps model certain things, or they're perhaps running advanced simulation softwares that then dumps out into Excel. Whatever the case might be, I would say 99% of the time, if you can get it into a spreadsheet or into a text file, we can get it into Prophix.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. Another more general question that I saw come through was just about having multiple ERPs. I know we addressed this a couple times, but just to confirm, maybe I'll pose it to you, Jamie. If they have multiple ERPs, can they then use all that data from all those different systems and bring it in for, say, like consolidated reporting?
Yeah, and maybe something that we can address in a subsequent webinar, and certainly in a case-by-case basis. But Prophix's import and export tool that I was just talking about in the last kind of section also has a mapping tool built into the front end of Prophix. So a common case for a lot of our clients is that they do have multiple different companies running not only different systems perhaps, but potentially completely different charts of accounts. We essentially develop a communal or an accepted corporate level chart of accounts or reporting structures. We map everyone's across, but we actually also have the ability to build a model around the unmapped, so that perhaps in the case where you might have people at other organizations or sub-entities, they're able to report in the format that they're comfortable with, but that you can also have the consolidated data at the central finance level.
Thanks, Jamie. And I saw one around getting data into Prophix, the kind of preferred method there. I don't know if Jamie or Suzy, if you want to kind of address that.
I'll kind of take a first stab at it, but I know we've actually been discussing with Suzy some of the newer methods that we want to take here. Really, for us, it's more a product of where's the data living right now. Because for us, like I said, if it's in a flat file, that's more than happy for us. If we want to try and do a direct database connection, we can do that ODBC connection, whether Prophix is cloud or on-prem. Or if there is a way for us to touch data where it's in a cloud environment, that's also a favorable method for us.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that, have been in talks with Prophix about re-engineering the way we integrate with Prophix to utilize one of our automated data export tools from QAD, which would allow us to essentially determine all of the data that needs to go to Prophix on a routine basis and automate that data transmission. That doesn't mean that at month end, when it's crunch time and you need to be doing some detailed things and some time sensitive things, that you couldn't run that data synchronization manually, but it would just help automate the process in the back end. So that is a work in process, should be ready within the next couple of weeks, and it should certainly simplify that data integration between QAD and Prophix.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's great. So I think from what I've seen, a couple other questions came through that might be better served to kind of take offline and address kind of on a case-by-case basis. But just wanted to say before that, thanks everyone so much for taking some time and attending with us today. And thanks as well to the team at Strategic. Of course, Suzy and Kelly and Barbara on the marketing side for helping to set this up with us. Thanks again for attending and spending some time with us.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone.